Every night, a man wakes up inside of an empty, dimly lit department store with absolutely no memory of his past. He cannot leave the premises. If the plaid hat on his head is ever removed, he is instantly paralyzed, turning into an inanimate object, potentially forever. That makes him one hat removal away from death inside of a department store. We're not just talking about the embarrassment of exposing your growing bald spot. Maybe if I just part it over to the side of the... But death. If this sounds like an episode of Black Mirror or maybe an existential horror film produced by A24, you might be shocked to know it wasn't. It was Canadian children's programming made for toddlers. That image, a grown man in a department store, opening his eyes for the first time every single episode, and choosing to act like it's the most extraordinary thing that has ever happened, lived rent-free in the brains of millions of North American children for 6 years. And here's the detail nobody ever thinks to talk about. He could never leave. Not once. Not for a single episode in 6 seasons, across 120 episodes. The moment Jeff stepped outside those doors, the magic stopped. He'd go stiff. He'd go silent. He'd go plastic again. Every episode of this show was built around a man who was fully awake, fully feeling, fully alive in every way that actually matters, and completely, permanently trapped inside a department store. And somehow, this was the show Canada gave children to teach us about friendship, and about sharing, and about being afraid, and what it means to love a world you can see through a window but never walk into. We need to talk about today's special. It was 1981. Canada's educational program broadcaster, TVOntario, affectionately known as TVO, needed a new children's show. TVOntario existed to educate, not just to entertain, to actually teach children things, which in 1981 was considered a reasonable goal for television and not a punchline. Producer Clive Vanderberg had an idea that was either a stroke of pure genius or the result of a very specific kind of creative fever. Probably both. The pitch: a department store, after hours. A mannequin who comes to life when a magic hat is placed on his head. A young window dresser named Jody who brings him to life each episode. An elderly night security guardman named Sam who did not sign up for any of this and is only barely coping. A mouse named Muffy who lives in the walls, wears Victorian garb, and get this, speaks exclusively in rhyme. And a computer cash register named TXL who has opinions and feelings and functions as the group's emotional support system. I want to pause on that pitch for just a second. A rhyming mouse, a sentient computer, a mannequin who can't leave, a security guard who definitely thought this was a normal job. Clive Vanderbilt handed this to TVOntario and said, essentially, yes, this is what we're doing for children. And TVOntario said, yes, for 6 seasons, 120 episodes, multiple Gemini Award nominations, Canada's version of the Emmys. This premise worked. It shouldn't have, it did. They cast Jeff Hyslop in the lead role, and this is the detail that changes everything about the show once you know about it. Jeff Hyslop was not just an actor. Jeff Hyslop was a classically trained ballet dancer and choreographer. His Broadway credits include nearly 1,000 performances as the Phantom in the Canadian tour of the Phantom of the Opera.
If you really think about it, isn't that big of a character leap? A secret mannequin that haunts a department store? A masked phantom that haunts a theater? This is the best typecasting I've ever seen.
A man who spent decades training his body to move with the kind of precision and grace that makes audiences feel like they're watching something that was more magical than the character was written to be. And they cast him as the mannequin, discovering how to walk. What Hyslop did with that was borderline poetic. He played Jeff not as clumsy or robotic, not as Frankenstein's monster learning to lurch around, but as someone moving through the world with enormous care and deliberate wonder. Every gesture was considered. Every expression was chosen. When Jeff reached for something, it looked like he was reaching for it for the first time, and understood, on some level, that he was lucky to have hands. That is a ballet dancer making the most of an impossible premise. And it is the single biggest reason the show felt magical instead of just deeply strange.
Noreen Virgin played Jody, the window dresser who was, in many ways, Jeff's anchor to the world. Warm, capable, patient, the kind of person who explains things without making you feel small for not knowing them. This was one of the first Canadian kids shows to put a black woman and a white man in permanent co-lead roles as equals, colleagues, and friends. Noreen knew exactly what she was doing. She took the role because she wanted kids to see a black woman who was smart, capable, and empathetic, specifically to counteract the derogatory stereotypes she had grown up watching on TV. The show's reach was so wide it even aired in Bophuthatswana, a black-ruled enclave inside apartheid-era South Africa. Think about the gravity of that for a second. Black children living under the crushing weight of apartheid were watching a black Canadian woman lead a daytime TV show while Nelson Mandela was still in prison. That is genuinely legendary. Bob Dermer played Sam, the security guard, a Navy veteran puppet who is canonically born in 1919 and whose wife, Maud, died. Which is an insanely heavy backstory for a puppet with someone's hand up its butt. He brought this beautiful gruffness to the role that always had warmth underneath it, like a man who'd learned the hard way that the world was worth protecting. And then there was Muffy Mouse. Muffy Mouse, Victorian dress, wall-dwelling, 100% committed to rhyming every single sentence she ever spoke for the entire run of the show, not just her catchphrases. Not just her big emotional moments, every single line, every question, every observation, every reaction, every goodbye, a rhyme. The writing team had to find a rhyme for everything Muffy needed to say across 6 years of television, and they did it. And it was both charming and quietly one of the most audacious creative decisions they made for the program. Writing a character who can only speak in rhymes and keeping her coherent and emotionally resonant for 120 episodes is not a quirk. That is craft. That is commitment. That is writers staying late, and I respect every single one of them. And rounding out the ensemble, TXL, the store's computer system, a machine with a female voice and somehow feelings about things. TXL checked in, TXL cared, TXL remembered. When the average television portrayal of artificial intelligence was either it will destroy us or it cannot understand human emotion, today's special gave children a computer who was gentle and curious and emotionally invested in the people around her. I'm not saying TVO predicted the next 40 years of AI discourse. The show hit Nickelodeon in the United States partway through its run, and suddenly, millions of American kids had this quietly extraordinary Canadian show beaming into their living rooms, rewiring something in the back of their brains. Most of them had no idea it was educational television. They just knew it made them feel something. Hold on to that, because here's where it gets interesting. Here is what you thought you were watching. A fun show about a magic mannequin learning about the world. Every episode, Jeff wakes up, learns about a theme, friendship, fear, sharing, music, something, has some adventures in the store, and goes back to sleep when his hat comes off or the sun comes up. Educational TV, themes, values, the usual. That is not what you were watching. What you were actually watching was a show about someone who is permanently, structurally excluded from the world he loves. Jeff doesn't just have limitations. Jeff is a limitation given human form. He can see the storefront windows from the inside. He can read about oceans and mountains and baseball games. He can hear about summer afternoons and what it feels like to run. But the moment he steps through those doors, the moment he crosses from the inside to the outside, he reverts, he stops, he goes back to being an object. Every episode of today's special is Jeff learning about something he will never, ever actually experience. That is not a children's show about discovery. That is Plato's cave with a magic hat. And here's the thing that makes it hit harder once you notice it. Jeff never really despairs about it. Not in a way that breaks him. There's wistfulness sometimes, a pause at the window, a quiet moment looking out, but Jeff doesn't rage against his limits. He turns toward the world he has. He makes curiosity its own kind of travel. He learns everything he can reach, not because he's given up on what he can't, but because the reaching itself is worth something. That is not an accident. That is a show that understood something about how to survive your own limitations that most adult content still hasn't figured out. Now here's the recontextualization move I need you to sit with, because this is the thing that changes the show once you see it. Jeff is not the fantasy in today's special. Jeff is the mirror. Every child watching that show was also confined to their bedroom, their grade, their height on the roller coaster sign, their age on the movie poster. Children live inside limitations they did not choose and cannot escape. Rules made by adults for reasons they don't fully understand. A world they can see from the inside but can't fully access yet. Jeff, standing at that department store window, learning about things he'll never touch, was not a sad magical creature from a different world. He was the most honest depiction of childhood that Canadian educational television ever managed. He was all of us. And we didn't notice because we were busy watching a mannequin talk to a rhyming mouse. The after-hour setting was doing a lot of heavy lifting here too, and it doesn't get enough credit. A department store after closing is already a liminal space, a place that exists in a strange in-between state, frozen between the bustle of daytime and the emptiness of night. It is a little magical and a little eerie, in a way that every kid intuitively understood. You've never been alone in a department store after closing. You've also always known, somehow, what it would feel like. Today's special lived in that space. The store wasn't just a location, it was a feeling. The show was happening somewhere between real and not real, and it pulled you in completely. Each character in the ensemble was doing something specific to that dynamic. Sam, the security guard, was a man who had already lived outside and come back in, who had been in the world and found his people in this small, strange, after-hours family. His gruffness was the gruffness of someone who had seen enough of the world to know that what he had right here was worth protecting. Jody was on her way somewhere, young, capable, the door perpetually open for her. She represented possibility. Muffy, rhyming compulsively against all sense and reason, was limitation transformed into art. She could not speak without rhyming. She did it anyway, beautifully, every single time. She was the show's argument for making the best of your constraints, delivered through the medium of a Victorian mouse. And TXL, the computer who cared, was the show quietly arguing in 1981 that intelligence without warmth is just processing, and that the most important thing any mind can do is pay attention to the people around it. And one more thing, because I didn't want to believe this when I found it. This show tackled alcoholism in a children's program about a mannequin. They did an episode about grief when Muffy's pet butterfly died. They did a whole episode on cerebral palsy. They handled disability, loss, honesty, moving, all the stuff kids' television in 1981 was not supposed to touch, with the kind of quiet respect most adults don't extend to toddlers. They did an episode called Phil's Visit, featuring a drunk photographer whose alcoholism destroys his friendship with Sam and ends with him banished from the store entirely. This was preschool television. In another episode, Jeff gets a wish to finally leave the store, and he sacrifices his one chance at freedom for his friends. The show even had a dedicated sad flute musical cue, specifically designed to signal to toddlers that it was time to be profoundly sad. So, if you ever wondered why you get inexplicable waves of emotional feelings when you visit indoor retail spaces, now you know.
Here.
Today's special trusted its audience. 6-year-olds watching Jeff stare out a window understood
anybody
something
seen
about that
Muffy?
moment that they wouldn't have words for until they were 30.
well.
The
guess
show
she's
planted
taking a
seeds
mouse
it
nap
knew
somewhere.
might take years to grow. And I keep coming back to Hyslop because I don't think this show works without him. He made Jeff's wonder feel earned rather than performed. When Jeff was astonished by something, which was frequently, it didn't read as childlike naivety, it read as genuine astonishment. The specific, awake kind that most people lose somewhere between childhood and adulthood and spend the rest of their lives trying to get back. Watching Jeff be amazed reminded you what it felt like to be amazed. That is an extraordinary thing for a performer to accomplish. That is also an extraordinary thing to give children who are in the process of being amazed for the first time and need to know it's allowed. There's a moment that happened to everyone who grew up with today's special. You may not remember exactly when. You were watching Jeff at the window that shot, the one where he's looking out at the street and the light is coming through the glass and he knows he can't go and something moved in your chest. You didn't have the word for it yet. You were 6, or 8, or 10, but you felt it. That feeling was longing. The specific ache of wanting something you can see clearly but cannot reach. The strange grief of a beautiful world you're not quite inside yet. Jeff gave that feeling a face. A gentle, graceful, magic hat-wearing face, and seeing your own feeling reflected back at you by a character, by a story, by a show someone made on purpose with the specific hope that you'd feel it is one of the things fiction is for, one of the things it's always been for. Here's what I think today's special was really about. Underneath all of it, you only get to discover things once. The first time you hear your favorite song, the first time you see the ocean. The first time someone explains something and you feel the world get a little bigger and you can feel it happening in real time, Jeff got to have that experience with everything, every episode, reset each time. And watching him have it, watching him reach for the world with that dancer's grace and that absolutely genuine astonishment reminded us what discovery felt like before we started skipping it. Before we started knowing things already. Before we got too busy to notice. We grew up. Jeff couldn't. And here's the thing nobody says out loud. That's not just sad. That's also the deal we made. We got to go outside. We got to touch the ocean, feel the summer afternoon, run toward whatever we were running toward. We got the whole world. And somewhere in getting it, we stopped looking at it the way Jeff looked at it through that window. When you suddenly remember this show, when a detail floats up from somewhere you forgot you kept things, and it lands in your present moment without warning, you're not just remembering a TV show. You're remembering the version of yourself who still found things extraordinary, who still got to learn the world for the first time, who still lived, in some ways, inside the store. Looking out at everything, waiting to be old enough, waiting to be ready. Not yet. Not quite yet. Jeff never got to go outside, but every kid who watched him did. And somewhere in the distance between those two things is the whole shape of growing up.
Today is special. 120 episodes of a Canadian mannequin on a public educational channel, reminding us that wonder is not a phase you outgrow. It's a choice you make every day, or you don't, and the days add up fast. And yes, I am aware I just got a little emotional about a show featuring a rhyming Victorian mouse as a major character. But don't look at me like that. You're the one that clicked on this video. You felt something too. Admit it. If this brought something back for you, hit like and subscribe, because this channel exists specifically for that moment when a forgotten children's show reaches back through time and reminds you of where you were before everything got complicated. Hit the bell, don't miss the next one, and drop your memories in the comments below, because I'm telling you right now, there is something about this show living in the back of your head that you haven't thought about in 20 years. Let's go find it.